Welcome everyone to Through the Void Gate, a Warcaster podcast for new and experienced players. Deploying in 3.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Through the Void Gate. Thanks for joining us for episode 10. I'm joined today by Justin.
Howdy.
And Spencer.
Hey.
Today we're talking about new players and everything you need to know when you're a new player and how to get new players into the game. Before we start into our main topic, let's talk about what's going on in the community. So, Sneaky?
All right, so first off, huge shout out to Ryan over at Studio M. He's been pumping out new player introductory videos on his YouTube channel. So definitely check out Studio M on YouTube. He's been going through TTS, going through the entire turn structure, how to build lists, how to load up maps on TTS, just anything that you need to know in order to get started, he's got you covered. So definitely check him out. I know he's got a lot more content coming in the future, maybe in some partnerships with a couple of us, going over some faction stuff. So keep an eye out for him. Check out his videos. He's doing awesome things for the community. He's also doing a bunch of STL work in order to, for the people with 3D printers. I'm not one of those people, but, he's been helping out. So huge shout out to Ryan. The other thing we have going on in the community is the first round of the Season 2 of the TTS League. So our first Pendulum event has ended. So we are going into round 2 for this week. So I'm super excited. Everybody's been having a good time. So I'm pretty happy with the way everything's going.
Yeah, I had a really good game with No Howard and Luis from Charge and Spike. It's been a great time so far. Really enjoying it. So thanks for putting that on for us, Sneaky.
You're welcome.
Okay. And next we have news with Justin.
So there's been not a ton of news, but Privateer Press has been putting out a good amount of articles, a little faction insight about each of the factions. So they did like a glossing over of each of the 3 initial factions so far, and then Jason Souls actually put out a really long, in-depth, deep read on Aeternus. I would highly suggest reading that one. That was really good, and it actually gave us a little spoiler in there of what might be an upcoming AC Cypher card, where you get to basically kill one of your own squad members and turn him into a solo. And I believe he specifically mentioned killing a squad member and turning it into Moorgrave. So I'm really excited for that card. I think that definitely changes how powerful our squads can be, and it does a lot for the faction, really. So I'm excited to see that stuff when it comes out. In other news, the backer kit did close. I think it was the 15th that it closed. They're just now starting to charge cards, and they're estimating shipping to be done in March, or at least started in March. They're giving themselves until April, but I think they're planning on having it done in March. So that's about it for the news.
All right. So let's get down to our main topic. And I think the most important place to start would be why someone should be interested in Warcaster. Justin, do you want to lead off with that one?
Yeah, Warcaster is so unique and so special compared to most other games. And one of the biggest things that it has going for it is that the game is fundamentally different at different game sizes. What I mean by that is you choose different number of units, and your board size changes. Like anybody who's played skirmish as opposed to full size will tell you it's the same game, but it's not the same game. It gives you a whole lot of replayability and a whole lot more to experience. One of the other big things that Warcaster really has tried to focus on is streamlining a lot of these nitty-gritty rules. You'll find in Games Workshop, you see they have to fact things 5 times sometimes just to get the rules to flow right. In Warcaster, there are still some things that are a little vague, but they're mostly streamlined. Things are designed to be a lot easier. Usually, if you have a rules interaction that you're wondering about, think about how the easiest way to resolve it would be, and usually that's the way that's right. Another really interesting thing that will draw players into Warcaster is that they've got really cool twists on classic tropes. One example is AC. There's always these dirty underbelly, just cultish groups in games and sci-fi and tropes and everything. But these guys are like cyborgs, but not cyborgs. But they're searching for immortality by replacing their entire body and kind of losing a little bit of their humanity. There's a really cool twist on a lot of different tropes that is kind of a unique take. Sneaky, do you want to do some more of them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we were talking about the Empyreans, and like they're this weird mashup of like Protoss and Sentinels from the Matrix and Necrons, and like I don't know, they're just like this really cool, also semi-culty alien force of robots, but with souls, but also mostly AI, and like I don't know, they're just really cool, And then you've got like your classics with the Iron Star Alliance and the Marcher Worlds of like your corporate like oppressor like classic people of power armor, and they're the ones with all the cool fun toys and all the stuff, and then your Marcher Worlds are like your space cowboys, but they're just done in a really cool, unique way. So like they're recognizable, but they definitely have their own identity.
Right, and that's a great thing going for this game. Is you have all the things you love, but in a new twist on them, and that can bring new life to these different things. Another awesome thing about this game is that it really lends itself well to having these scenic, immersive game boards. I've seen other games that'll use terrain, but it will have very limited use and very limited meaning. The way this game functions, terrain looks beautiful, but it's very useful, and the more of it you have, the more you get out of it. Usually, there is a potential to have too much, but for the most part, you can add terrain and just keep getting more and more out of the game that way, and it's really awesome. Like I have a million pictures on my phone of different game boards that I've made. It's really awesome. Another really cool feature of the game is the cipher deck, the rack. It's a card system that augments and supplements your strategy. You can build for your cipher deck, you can plan around your cipher deck, or you can be like, well, my cipher deck is just going to kind of help out what I'm already trying to do, right? Like it's really interesting. Sometimes, like in AC, I'll build around having mortality destabilizer, a grafter, and displacement index to get that squad to be able to stretch across the board. Or in ISA, they have that new cipher card that'll make their squad +2 mat, +2 rat, +2 defense. Maybe I'll try and hold a point with that squad after trying to blow up the world with it. And meanwhile, like Furies are just something like, hey, I've got the opportunity to use this. Maybe I didn't build around Furies. Maybe I just have my 3 base and I put a Weaver in my list but it's come up. It happens to be the right time. Let's do it. It's just ciphers add so much to the game, and it's crazy because I know when I was on the outside looking in at the game, I was like not super hyped about ciphers. But they add so much. The game, it adds so much to the game. You would not even believe it.
That's funny because ciphers were the thing that got me pumped for the game. Like a deck building aspect within a miniatures game just seemed like layering dimensions on.
Well, it was so weird. Like I remember thinking when I very first saw the game that I would never use Weavers. I was like, I'll just, I don't need Weavers. I'll just use the other thing. And now I would never leave one without. Like, I saw like one game of one of the like just them talking about the game. I was like, I don't want to use Weavers. This seems stupid. This guy just sits there to be like an arc node. Like, come on. And then I saw the game played, and I played a couple, and I was like, I love Weavers. They're like my favorite thing on the planet. So
yeah, now they're your bread and butter every time you play.
Like they're like the only thing I ever count on in AC. Hero Weaver time.
The irony there is not lost on me.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's just one of those things that I just did not expect it to be as influential as it was in the game, or as it is in the game, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change out of Kickstarter 2 was the ciphers, and they completely changed the game.
True, and you know what? What's interesting is like before my cipher deck felt pretty stale, and I didn't feel like I had a ton of options. Like, for Pendulum, I don't, if with the old Cypher deck, I don't even know if I'd even filled out all my additional slots, right? A lot of them really just didn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. Now, those slots are hotly contested. It's really hard for me to be like, how do I stay under 15 cards? I'm having a hard time sticking to 14 cards. Like, it's so hard to say what you don't want for your deck. Like, I feel like I'm making a huge mistake not playing my solos get to move 2 inches, right? I feel like that's a huge mistake on my part, but I just cannot find room in my decks for it.
Mm-hmm.
Another really interesting part about the game that you can bring up to new players is how this game isn't about attrition. It's got built-in recursion built into every turn. Putting out void gates, summoning new units, and things are going to die. You both get to experience killing things. It's not one of those games where, if somebody gets a first turn, hey, I killed your thing, it isn't like the game's usually instantly over at that point. You can hide your things, you can put out gates, you can get those things back, and you can start pressuring scenario and actually have a real game. Attrition is not necessarily a win condition in this game. There is the whole, mercy rule where, if you table somebody and it has to be the second pulse round, right?
It has to be second pulse round. They have to be tabled with no void gate on the board, which I have never, ever seen happen.
Yeah, I've never even seen it come close to.
I haven't seen that happen. Now, I have seen people get tabled. I was nearly tabled last night. Or I got tabled my second turn, and then I was almost tabled again at another point in the game. But,
Which won?
Attrition and recursion, it's and I still won that game, despite that. It just shows you how all over the place Warcaster can be as a game. And whereas some people might find that kind of like a little bit like, well, it doesn't matter if I lose things. Like, why would I want to play this? Well, you can bring those things back and doing putting things in positions to draw fire, to survive and get on a point later on, to seem unimportant. There are all different strategies you can employ in the game, and it makes for a much, much deeper game.
Yeah. The other cool thing about void gates is that the field of battle changes very dynamically. So, like, instead of other games where basically each player starts on one side of the board and then you rush up until you're both hit the middle and then you're just fighting over the middle of the board for the rest of the game. The field of battle can change completely throughout a game of Warcaster because you can throw a void gate, across the board and then, run someone across the board, throw a void gate out, and then put your models out even further beyond that. And then suddenly, instead of fighting in the middle of the board, you've got your stuff back in your opponent's deployment zone, right? And then it just completely changes the field of battle. It's very dynamic, and things change constantly throughout the game of where you're fighting and what you're fighting over and what you're fighting with, which is really cool.
Well, I think it's really cool because, like what you're saying, where you can see the field of battle change. Most other games, you can take a look at that board at most points in the game and tell what side each player started on. In Warcaster, that's not a guaranteed thing. I know I've looked at the board, and somebody's had no models on their own side of the board and had like everything on the opposite side of the board. I've seen so many crazy things in Warcaster. It's a really dynamic game, and a lot of things change constantly, which is a good thing. That's a good thing. It keeps the game interesting. It isn't like, some other games you're like, well, I'm not going to be able to deal with that unit ever, and I don't know, I'm going to lose my whole army to it. I don't know how I win. And, I mean, you'll lose units, and there are some things in the game that you will lose a lot of units to. But you can bring those units back, which is a big, big, big plus for the game. Another unique twist that Warcaster takes is the dice. I think this one's kind of 50-50 whether it's a plus or a minus, honestly, because some people really like consistency, which is one of the things that War Machine kind of brings with the 2d6 system. You can, there are highs and lows on those with, snakes and boxcars. But in Warcaster, they use strike dice. So the red dice, which are basically a 2+ roll with a 6 being a crit and counting as 2. And the white dice, which is basically a 4+ roll with still the 6 being a crit. It makes for very swingy attacks. I know I've swung at things with much lower defense, and even just the defense and attack versus, however much you beat them and doing that against armor, it's a huge boon for the game. Like, it makes all of these individual stats feel much more important. And so, the dice can swing, and that's part of the fun. I know I've had a Weaver survive an entire Fighter Dust Bowl. I think that was against you, Josh, right?
Yes.
And it was crazy. Like, I could not even believe that it happened. But you know what? That game was forever ago, and I still remember it. there are a lot of these really cool moments that will burn their way into your mind because the dice let crazy things happen. Another big advantage of the game is that it's like a limited activations game, but the limited activations kind of form this turn structure, the way the pulse rounds and turns work. So each turn, each player gets to move a solo and anything else, and then your turn's over. Well, you get your other parts where you get the second cipher and all that, but that's the only models you get to activate. And so what it does is, whereas there's a lot of other games where it's either activate your whole army and then your opponent gets two, so they can have like more massive swing turns happen, or where it's a lot of these other limited activation systems where we both activate one and then it's whoever's ahead on attrition kind of gets this weird advantage built in. They've kind of mitigated that a little bit by saying, hey, listen, you're never getting more than two things and you're always getting at least. So sure, you can kill somebody solos and kind of make an advantage for yourself as far as activations, but you're not going to, you're never activating more than one thing than they did, which I think is a huge boon for the game. Because I know that I've felt a lot of those, like, activate 1-to-1. You know, I've always been like, well, he's got 15 things over there and I've got 5. Like, I'm going to be here forever just watching him do his things and he's getting to wait me out. So it's, and I know that Malifaux has kind of introduced a system to fix that where you get to have like these wait turns that you can do. I haven't played much Malifaux. I've been kind of interested to see how that kind of worked out, but I don't know if that entirely fixes the problem. Whereas I feel like this, they found a very, very elegant way to fix limited activations.
Yeah, and it creates this whole dynamic, right, with you know, strategies where it comes to limiting your opponent's activations by killing certain models, or, you know, manipulating your activation tokens so that you can reactivate things or prevent things from being activated, or, you know, all kinds of other different strategies that just keep the game interesting.
And the pulse round system is actually super interesting in itself too. It makes these interesting like scoring points in the game, and you're kind of playing multiple turns for this point in the game, and then you play so many more turns for the second point in the game, and then a third point in the game, and then it's kind of who played those in between points better kind of ends up being the winner. It's a really interesting, elegant way to deal with just the way that these games work. And my final point about things that you should try and introduce to new players to get them hyped about Warcaster is just the ARC management system. Resource systems and managing them appropriately can feel very good. And this game really tests what you want to do, because ARC is everything in this game. Pretty sure most models in the game feel pretty derpy when you activate them without ARC. Meanwhile, you know, you need that ARC for summoning. So sometimes you don't get to put out the ARC that you want to. I know I've had a lot of turns where I've had multiple ARC out and a gate out, and I've had nothing in my well, and I've mismanaged my own ARC poorly enough that it's come back to bite me. And you know, that may seem bad, but it's actually a good thing because it makes me learn different things about the game, and it challenges me every turn. So it's got a lot of really cool nuanced rules that'll keep challenging players and getting them to experience new and cool things.
Okay, I think like the easiest way to like describe it for people, especially those that play War Machine, is imagine if your focus pool affected every single unit on the board and the spells that you cast, and you have to dynamically manage all of that every single turn. And it might sound a bit overwhelming, but it's not. It just adds so much depth to the game. I love managing ARC. It's like my favorite thing about the game.
It's like I always tell people, Warcaster to me feels kind of like the Hearthstone of miniature games. Like, you can teach somebody Warcaster relatively easy. Like, teaching them the basics of how the turn structure works and how the game works is easy. From there, it's kind of difficult to master, and there's so much nitty gritty and nuance to how you can play things that it really involves a lot of depth and a lot of randomness too. So it's an awesome game, and I would suggest anything.
Yeah. My one last thing I would say on the ARC management is there's that balance too of you having ARC out on your models, wanting to summon, and then you also have Furies which use ARC to hit harder. So there's been times where I've had to like pull ARC off of gates or models just to shoot a Fury at something because I need the few extra dice to ensure it hits.
Right, and knowing those key points in the game is one of those really hard things to set rules for and to manage. But when you find one of those points and you actually manage to do it and pull that arc and pull an appropriate amount of arc, it feels really good. It's
It
very
does.
rewarding.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that doing the YOLO pull in Fury is what won Josh's his round 1 of the league. So it's definitely rewarding when you pull it off.
I cleared 4 arc off of a gate, 3 or 4 arc off of a gate, leaving myself with no void gate out to summon, just to launch 2 Furies at my opponent's Nemesis, because if I didn't at least move it off the point, I was probably going to lose the game, but because I pulled so much arc off and launched 2 Furies, I managed to kill it, which was a massive swing turn in the 3rd pulse round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn 1 of pulse round 3.
So it just adds like that extra layer to the game. So now that we've talked about why someone should be interested in Warcaster, Sneaky, how would you try and get potential new players interested in the game?
All right. Well, the number one thing is get people to play the game, right? So the best thing is to get demo games because it's so much fun, it's so dynamic, and it's so different that as soon as people start playing the game, if they like miniature games at all, they're gonna love it 9 times out of 10. So I know it's a little bit crazy, in the world right now, and getting in-person games isn't all that easy. But if you're in a position to where you can do that, then definitely go for it. And you don't have to worry about getting the models. You can proxy, right? It's a 30 millimeter heroic or 32 millimeter heroic, whatever it is that they use. So you can use your War Machine models. You can use a lot of Warhammer 40K models. I mean, as long as you've got 30 millimeter bases, 40 millimeter bases, 50 millimeter bases, and then if you want to play test vehicles, something that can be, an 80 millimeter base, like a 3-inch ring from War Machine or something like that can be used. But yeah, just get people to play the game. And then if you're in a position where that's not possible to do in person, Tabletop Simulator has been amazing. I'm running my league on Tabletop Simulator. I've played over 100 games on it, throughout the last year. And it goes on sale all the time. It's only $20. We've done a ton of tweaks and improvements to try to make it as accessible and usable in that format as possible. And we're constantly working on developing it and making it even better. So, at the very least, pick up Tabletop Simulator, get your friends to pick it up, and play a couple of games. It's also really cool because you can use it for a ton of other stuff other than Warcaster. It's a really cool application. So definitely get in some games because once people start playing, they're gonna fall in love with it. I promise. The other thing is you can just start talking about it, right? Get with your friends, talk about how awesome you think these models are, or strategies, or how you would build your cipher deck, or what your lists are gonna look like, and how you want to paint up your models, things like that. Just talking about the game can build hype. That's what we're doing here. It's why we do this.
Tell
we
them about
want
the dynamic moments that happen in your games too.
Absolutely.
I just had a Weaver last night win me a game by spiking to move up a building, and then jump off a building over a dusk wolf to then shoot a velocity projector at it off of a point so I could score 2 to win the game. Like, I don't know any other game that does that. Is there another game where you can just jump over models and then blast them with a spell? I don't know. It was like I haven't seen it. It was a cool moment. It was like a lot of things had to work together to happen, and if any of those dice rolls failed, it was just like, well, GG. But it was really cool, and I'll remember that game for the rest of my life. Like, that game was awesome. Very contentious neck and neck. Like, it was a good game. I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, or like my top deck impulse inducer against the Morningstar spam. Like,
oh my god.
Oh man, that game was crazy.
Like this game really does lend itself to these really crazy moments that you'll remember forever. There was one time Sneaky with like a shot that should have 1% to 100 to 0 a Marauder did it. There was another time, it's like with Josh, we were just talking about how the Duskwolf fighter just didn't kill a Weaver when he really should have, and this Weaver was probably pissing himself. Like, a Duskwolf fighter comes up to a Weaver, that Weaver should be dead. 4 attacks plus probably a gun, like that Weaver that Weaver already went home, you know, like, and then that Weaver's like already still there. Like, I'm gonna remember that moment for a while. Josh might not have such fond memories of it, but he's gonna remember it too.
I've done my best to block it out, so I appreciate you guys bringing it up multiple times this cast.
Yeah. Or
Do you
when
have any interesting moments you've had, Josh?
I mean, it's always interesting to one-shot a nemesis.
Or does Strike Raptor playing does it blend with the board every game? Kind of blend together.
I will say
Just
that chain activating a Strike Raptor constantly does tend to blend stuff together. I have one-shot many things, so I don't have too many moments that like stand out outside of like me flying the Strike Raptor on top of the central building against the Empyreans and kinetic accelerating to attack like 5 things.
and
Didn't
still
the fulcrum? Wasn't that the only thing that died? Was like the factotum or the fulcrum?
No, I think the fulcrum was the only thing that lived. Just a mechanic sitting there giving me the finger.
No, the factotum didn't take a single damage, and the demon lived with 1 health.
Yeah.
By the way,
just remember
my
being
after action reports for the league is to complain about how factotums are busted.
Yeah, I just remember the mechanic sitting there like laughing at me, like, "Oh, that was cute."
What about the game you decided never to run hunters again?
Oh, yeah, no, I blocked that so far out of my memory.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, summon all this stuff here and put the hunter over here to hide behind the point. Yeah, I got a spray.
All right. Quick piece of advice to aspiring Marcher Worlds players. Since this is the new player episode, just don't play hunters. They look cool. They're a nice shelf piece with their big sniper rifle. They suck. Just let it sit on the shelf.
Hey, I
Don't
think
play
one
that.
hunter in full size can be okay.
Okay, 1 hunter on full size, maybe to get you a gate up the board. All right, but no.
Maybe, but actually no.
But actually, no.
I mean, all the power to you if you absolutely love the model and want to play it. But I personally hate the hunter.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up like the last little point that we had is painting your minis. Like the minis for Warcaster look amazing. Like they look so cool, and painting them up and showing your friends. Like if they care about the hobby and they like that kind of stuff, they'll get hyped about it because if they like the sci-fi aesthetic at all, there's something here for them. You've got your power armor guys. You've got your space cowboys, with their camo and the long rifles and the huge chunky robots and giant guns, and you got your alien robotic squid things there's, and your edgy culty hide in the dark cyborgs, the MLM of the Cirrus Galaxy. If people like that, any kind of sci-fi aesthetic at all, there's something here. And we know that we don't know, but we're pretty certain there's going to be bio factions in the future, which, are going to be super cool.
Jumping on that train.
I'm happy with my Empyreans.
But, if you have any friends that are like me and like to convert and just do different things with your models, I mean, there's a little bit of limitation here because a lot of the shoulders and heads are connected. But that hasn't stopped me. I've made Space Skaven so far, and I've got the police force where, none of my firebrand. I have one jack out of my 9 that I own that has the correct head on it. So I might not be good for tournaments, but I'm gonna have a lot of fun with the way my models. So
that's fair.
Okay, so we've covered how we think it's best to try and promote the game and get new players interested. I think the next most important thing to touch on is what does a new player need to play besides minis, Justin?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that's a problem for most miniature war gamers is board space. Now, luckily, the skirmish size of this game, a 30 by 30. So many tables fit a 30 by 30. That's a really small play area. I'm used to playing on 48 by 48, and I still can't wrap my head about, how I lost 18 inches from both sides, So it's not a big ask if you just want to play skirmish, but if you are wanting to escalate up into the full-size game, you're going to need a 48 by 48 board space that's either marked off or you get like a mat for it. And that feels like a much bigger ask for me than the 30 by 30. 30 by 30 seems very, very doable. So if you're just trying to get somebody's palate wet with it and just, hey, let's try this. A lot of coffee tables can probably even hold a 30 by 30. So
and pretty much any kitchen table. So
yeah,
you need a kitchen table.
yeah. So it's really manageable for the skirmish size. So hey, that's all they're interested in, which some people really are. Some people really only care about the skirmish size of the game. It's not that big a ask for the board space. Do you have something you want to say?
Or grab a $20 poker table.
Yeah, just any card table really.
Mm-hmm.
Work. Terrain. Now terrain. You could get really nice terrain. I bought a really nice terrain set because I really want to be showcasing the game when I show people. But for a new player, I mean, you can just take books, and designate where ladders are. Just put a quarter at the top of the book and at the bottom, so then you know where the ladders are. You don't need elaborate, really awesome terrain. You can use War Machine flat terrain in some cases. You don't need elaborate terrain, but you do need terrain. The game gets so much better with terrain. Yeah. So, I don't care what your game board looks like. As long as the game board works, like, play with it. As long as you're having fun, who cares what it looks like? I don't care if you've got, rolls of chain sitting on there and those are your low walls. You do you, man. If it works, it works.
Yeah, and like you can get terrain super cheap, and you can proxy terrain, you can make terrain. Like, I think a $10 set of the super cheap Infinity terrain, if you can find it, and like one of the industrial starters from Tinker Turf, so you can get that total for like $60. Gives you an amazing skirmish board. But if you want to do it for free, like I've got stuff over here I'm planning on painting up. I've got a big cashew can, right? You can use, toilet paper rolls. You can use like random stuff from trash. I know I took a bunch of Amazon boxes and cut them up and turned them into stuff. So you've got tons of options for just stuff that's around your house. You just throw it on a table and then go.
Riker's Iron held a whole competition where people were taking garbage and making terrain out of it, and some of the stuff people came up with were absolutely insane.
I know I've actually been watching videos recently on this guy on YouTube. I think it's like the miniature hobbyist or something. And like half of his channel is about turning like those old Games Workshop sprues, which people throw away all the time, and turning them into terrain and different things. And some of the stuff he makes is just so interesting and looks really good with fairly low effort. You can make terrain out of just about anything. It's don't let terrain be a barrier for entry for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you've got kids and they've got Hot Wheels. You've got obstacles. You've got obstacles for days.
And then the last thing you're really going to need is tokens to represent the different status effect and arc and the objectives and stuff. For these, like they all come in the starter boxes. So if you get a starter box, you've got enough to play there. I guess some people probably don't start with the starter boxes, or some people want to augment those, because I personally did not like the arc that came in the box. Just those little fishbowl beads that are different colored work really great for arc. They're really easy for people to see. They're really easy for you to keep track of. You just need 7 of them. And you could even do that. Go as far as to say, okay, well, my red ones are fire. The green ones are corrosion. The blue one is my arc. Black ones are activation tokens. And you could even make your whole own token set that way. As far as like if you needed objective markers and stuff, those are just 20 millimeters circles. Those are pretty easy to do. I don't know. Do you know what the measurements are on the portable objectives? There's only one mission that uses.
They're all 20 millimeters. All the objectives.
No, portables are smaller.
They're 20 millimeters too. They should be.
No, they're not. Anyways, I don't know the exact measurements on portable objectives, but they are tiny. They're like a little bit bigger than like a 3-hole punch size. Just there's ways to augment and make for better tokens and stuff without necessarily having to go the starter box route. Even though I would highly suggest going the starter box route.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just proxying, like if you're not sure about getting into the game or whatnot, then, use some of those little class beads. Cool thing is that if you wind up with way more than you need, you can crush them up and then make really cool stuff that you can put for basing. So if you have a hammer, yeah, you need a hammer and a towel or a dish rag or something, and you just something hard to put it on, like some cement or something, and then you just stick it on there, throw the towel on top, smash it with a hammer. You have a whole bunch of little chunks of glass. You just put it on your basing and then spray paint it, and you've got cool rock formations.
I have never thought about that.
Does not take credit for you wrecking your own driveway doing this.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
We are not liable for what you do to your driveway.
This is fair. Or your porch. Just
So, guys,
if you have a tile floor, do not do this on your tile floor.
oh, for the love of God, no. And please hit the bag and not your hand.
Yeah. Don't do the void gate. I got the hospital broken finger.
We are not liable for any injuries or damage caused by using this method. There. Someone said it.
But I am going to use that, because that does sound super interesting and cool.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those hanging around, and I've never thought about that. So guess what I'm doing tomorrow?
Editing a podcast?
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually what I'm doing tomorrow. Thanks, guys. All right. So, if I was a new player, where should I start?
I think one of the biggest things in talking to your new players is finding out where their interests are. Right? Because where you build out of for each faction is going to be a little different depending on if they just want to stay in skirmish land or if they eventually plan on going to full size. Right? So, and I'll say this, for all the factions, the starter boxes, getting at least one of them is the way to go. Basically, the way it works out, the value is you get one of those solos in there for free.
Perfect. So technically, you're not paying for that hunter that's going to sit on your shelf.
Right. So there's no harm in having that hunter. He's gonna look cool on your shelf. You could probably use him for some sci-fi like RPG game at some point. He's a cool model anyway, so like it's good to have him. You're getting him for free, and you get all the tokens and dice, and you'll want dice
And ciphers.
and ciphers, and so you almost need a
definitely
box
want
because you need the
ciphers.
ciphers.
Yeah.
I don't
you
think
have-
those are
you
sold
have to
separately
get the
now,
starter
are they?
box. They are not.
Yeah, you have to get it. I didn't even think about that. There really is no alternate route out of it.
Nope.
So spoilers, all of these are going to include starting with a starter box.
The funniest thing is the hunter is like the model that got me into Marcher Worlds, and now I hate it.
Yeah.
From a play
Well,
standpoint, it's still
Speaking
pretty.
of Marcher Worlds, Josh, how would you recommend a new player start for building for skirmish only, and if they intended to escalate to full size?
Okay, so as you said, always start with the starter box. It comes with everything you need to play. After that, I would pick up a Strike Raptor because it's our bread and butter. I go whole games almost without activating almost anything other than a Strike Raptor. I would pick up a second Dusk Wolf because I almost always run 2 Dusk Wolves. I would pick up a second Mechanic because they are probably our best solo.
Mechanics are not in the starter box, so you want to pick them to pick up 2 separate mechanics, right?
Yes, pick up 2 Mechanics. Thank you, Justin. I couldn't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, you get Hunter Weaver in there.
Blah. So
Your Weaver's good.
our Weaver is good.
Like Death 4 on a solo is good. Like, admittedly, the Weaver is not there to showcase how good it is at throwing out Furies. Usually, it's like an incidental thing that happens whenever it comes around. But
when it
being a
boots
Death 4
something with that
solo
slam stick,
is
though,
really good. Oh, it only slams things the same size. Like,
not the point.
It can win games. It can win games. So like,
Yeah.
Don't let me underplay it. But I think the biggest selling point of your Weaver is that it's a Death 4 solo, so it's reasonably hard to remove, reasonably harder to hit than most things.
Yeah, so I would go starter box, Strike Raptor, second Dusk Wolf, put the Hunter on the shelf, 2 Mechanic, a Weaver.
Is that
I
in
use-
addition to the Weaver from the box?
Yeah, an extra Weaver.
And a hero.
Yeah, and your hero, which post Kickstarter 2, I would recommend you bring Corbus. If you're just going off of the Kickstarter 1 stuff, I was a big fan of Artemis Fang.
They're all good. It's just playstyle.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't been a big fan of Jax.
That
Crazy.
defense 5 has been insane for me. I'm loving Jax. I've been testing her recently. I'm like, why have I not played this model sooner?
Jax is so good.
But that's what I'd start with. It gives you a little bit of variation, and I would take probably 1 unit of something. I typically tend to run the heavy squad because blast damage and being able to reroll is real good. But there is an argument for the infiltrators once they come out with the Kickstarter 2 stuff.
And if you don't feel like buying another squad, then the fire team is fine.
Oh yeah, the fire
team
team
is still solid. They've got 3 weapon options, and one of them is like one of the It is the longest range weapons of a squad in the game when they're
I
charged.
do think I criminally underplay them. You know me, I like to remove models from the table, and they feel like the least effective at doing that.
Yeah, they're very flexible. They can reach out really far. They can move really far. They've got null grenades for dealing with void gates. They've got melee in case cover's an issue. So like
They do all the things, but aren't particularly amazing at any of it.
Correct.
Except for moving. But that's not unique to them.
Yeah, true.
But yeah.
And they're still not as good as infiltrators at moving.
I mean, if I had them in AC, I wouldn't even run other squads. I'd just run
This is true.
But that's what I'd start with anyway.
Okay. Sneaky, how would you suggest somebody get into ISA?
Right. So obviously starter box, right? And then you're going to see a theme here, heavies. So pick up a Morning Star. And then I like to run. So Kickstarter 1, I run 3 Weavers. And then Kickstarter 2, 2 Weavers and a Siegebreaker, although I might be going back to 3 Weavers. So what you're going to want is at least 1 more Weaver from the box, and then either another Weaver or a Siegebreaker, depending on when you're picking up these models. You're going to want another Firebrand from the one that's in the box. You're going to want, so that gives us, so the Enforcers come in the box, the Paladin Commander comes in the box, who I don't run. If you don't want to spend the extra money on the Weaver or the Siegebreaker, you can run the Paladin Commander just fine. It's just not my personal favorite model. And then I like to run 2 squads, so it comes with Enforcers, so I'll pick up Annihilators. And then you're going to need some weapon packs with ISA, unfortunately, just because they like to stack the same builds. So you're going to need, if you pick up a Firebrand B, which is what I recommend, just so you've got different models to play with and paint with and do things with, you're going to need a weapon pack A and a weapon pack B for the Firebrand. And then for the Morning Star, you're going to need another weapon pack A if you want to run double shields. And then if you want to run Gatecrasher, you're going to need a weapon pack B. So ISA can be a little bit expensive to get into just because you need a lot of weapon packs. But yeah, so after you have your starter box, that's Morning Star, extra Firebrand, 2 more solos, and then my hero of choice is Justicar Voss. But for skirmish, I would not recommend Mira. Because she's just too squishy, and the game is too short for her to really give you that much advantage across the game, and it's really hard to hide her in skirmish, whereas you can on full size. So I like Voss, but Sudal and Moorgrave are also playable as well, and people like them and play them. But I like Thurges. Voss being able to smack people and pierce their armor with a PAL 5 melee weapon is pretty fun. Pretty fun.
Well, and when he's sitting around with an arc and can teleport, like, what?
Oh, yeah.
8?
Oh, yeah. And and you just put an arc on there, and people don't even want to shoot him anymore. Like, they don't even want to bother. Because he's just real annoying to get rid of. Real annoying.
And then what's more is if they don't even beat his defense by more than so much, he's like, I'll take it.
This is true. And I'll reposition 2 inches because I can.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's assuming he doesn't have a Defender Morningstar, just being like, yeah, I'll take it too.
Yeah.
The Morningstar, I love the Morningstar. Like, ISA has really great control over, like, just points. They're just like, this is my point. And in order to get rid of me, it's going to be annoying. That's what ISA is good at. They're good at turtling.
So
For sure.
Justin, how would you build out the continuum for if you were a new player?
Okay, so for a new player, Continuum actually, oddly enough, has the best value in the starter box. I say that because, first of all my Scourge builds so right now that I'm testing come from the starter box. I'm not sure about the heads because I don't use the right heads for anything. Like right now I'm using Hollow Page Rocket Pod, and that's exactly what's in the starter box. So even for skirmish size, AC players can get around with like 2 starter boxes and then buy another solo of choice that isn't the Grafter. So either another Weaver or Marauder, unless you want a Nemesis. Nemesis, unlike the other factions where they're pretty like mainstay, like you are going to want a heavy. I feel the Nemesis, at least in skirmish, is more of a choice. So that's a thing. Also, weirdly enough, AC also gets the most value out of their boxes because the the Marauder is one of the more expensive solos, and so if that counters your free solo, then their box actually gets you more value. So I would recommend getting 2 of those boxes, and then you buy either another, like, because you'll end up with an extra squad, so you end up with a bonus squad that you don't need, but you get tons of dice. You've gotten 2 free Marauders at this point, and then you buy either a Nemesis, you buy a Nemesis, a Weaver, or a Marauder. And that's a pretty solid little skirmish force there. Oh, and a hero solo, and I would suggest either Jax Redblade or Araxis. They are both just phenomenal. Then from that point, it's really easy to launch pad into full size. In full size, you're probably going to want 4 to 5 squads. I say 5 because a lot of the missions are more squad dependent. So a third of your list being things that can score is pretty important to me. So you can get the other 3 squads to taste because I think our little melee reavers are probably one of our better squads because PAL 5 melee weapons when they do hit are randomly good. The witch hunters are pretty much leave at home. So figure out your balance of the other 2 upcoming squad, the reavers. Raiders. Those names are so similar. I always get them messed up. So of the upcoming Raiders and the current Reavers, get you about 5 selections of those to taste. You're going to have 2 of the Reavers, but that's the way I like to do it. So you've got 4 solos right now, 2 Jacks, and a Nemesis. I would suggest maybe adding a Grafter. That's 13 slots right there out of your 15. Plus you get 3 hero solos, so just fill up on those. If you're talking post-Kickstarter 2 world, get yourself 2 sides. Treat yourself. Those things are so much fun. They do amazing things for the faction. They're like our only consistent way to get body count. They are just phenomenal models, and they will get you more value out of that one Grafter I suggested you buy. So go with those. Have a lot of fun. If you aren't using those, you can kind of juggle around what other thing you want to do. I wouldn't even get the Grafter without those, honestly. Get a 3rd Marauder, 3rd Weaver, and another Jack or something. Like those things really feel like they fill out the faction though. So if you're trying to escalate to full size, I would probably wait to kind of fill out a full size roster until those are available. And Sneaky, what would you suggest for Empyreans?
Awesome. So for Empyreans, obviously we're starting with a starter box. And then from there, we're picking up a Sentinel because the Sentinel is
Bay.
just... yeah, the Sentinel is Bay. And then, so the starter box comes with a Demon, the Saber Strike Force, an Oculus, and a Factotum. Not a Factotum, a Fulcrum. So what you're going to want is a Factotum, for sure. So we've got Sentinel and Factotum, another Demon. So I would pick up the B. And so for the Empyreans, they really want a lot of phased projectile cannons. So you're either going to be dumping a bunch into weapon packs, or you're going to have to figure some way to proxy or to convert other stuff into phased projectile cannons, because...
Make friends with people with 3D printers now.
Yeah, that, or like, say for example, like myself, right? I'm dual factioning, I'm picking up ISA and Empyreans. So in ISA, I'm not running Harbinger cannons, but guess what they are? They are ballistic weapons that ignore line of sight and cover, just like the phased projectile cannons. So I'm just going to take those, and turn them into phase projectile cannons and put them on my Sentinel. And so, like, if you have a buddy who plays ISA and they don't want their Harbinger cannons, take them and do what I'm doing. So or if you play other games and you can just stick some guns on there that look relatively similar to phase projectile cannons, and you're good to go, right? So you've got options there. So you've got Sentinel, Factotum. I do not like the Strike Force, so I will recommend that you get one of the other squads. It's like the only thing bad I have to say about Empyreans is the Strike Force is very meh. You can run them, they're fine, but the other two squads are just way better. I prefer the Guardians because range 14, POW 4, high intensity lockdown guns are just disgusting. So, big fan there. And then you're going to want to pick up an Aerolith because they're great. You're going to want to pick up Rakers for AC, which Justin didn't mention. You definitely want to pick up. You definitely want to pick up Rakers for AC.
Rakers make your squads worth playing.
Yes. So we've got the Sentinel, we've got the Factotum, we have a new squad. You don't need to, but I highly recommend picking up a Zenith with the Nyx upgrade because Nyx is so good. If you don't want to drop $75 on a single model, then you can make do with another solo. So it's kind of solo of choice because they all work, and it's just kind of like your playstyle. So if you want another Weaver, grab an Oculus. If you want another, good utility solo, grab a Fulcrum because being able to displace your models and displace enemy models is just really good. And the Factotum is just so chunk. He's so good at just holding points and healing your Warjacks and everything. So
or himself.
Yeah, or himself. So we've got a Factotum, a Sentinel, a Nyx, another squad, and another demon, right? Sentinel, Factotum, that's 2. Demon's 3, Nyx is 4. Okay, yep. And then the other squad is like just replacing the one that's in the starter box. And for your hero, Astrius is my boy, but Corvus is really good, Sex really good. I mean, they're all really good. So it's kind of just playstyle and whichever one appeals to you the most, but I always grab Astrius. And then going into full size, so you can build out for the 11 and 2, which is still in the skirmish maps, so you can keep playing those and just expand your force, which is pretty cool. So for that, I would just grab mostly just a couple more solos. So I would expand out with one of each of the other solos, bringing it to 6. That's your extra 3 slots right there. All you're doing is just buying more solos and then another hero. And then for full size from there, you're just filling out the last 4 slots with more squads. I like running, so for full size, because I like running Reiteration Complex in my deck, and the Vanguards don't really stack well with that, I just don't run the Vanguards. So I run 2 Strike Forces and 2 Saber Guardian, or Saber Guardian squads, but you can run whatever squads you want. Similar for ISA, since I didn't go into the upgrading to full size for them, it's you grab like 2 more solos, and then if you're okay spending the money, an Interceptor, preferably Duchess. If not, just grab 3 solos, and then to get to full size, then you just fill it out with your other 4 squads and your heroes. So also, regardless of what faction you're picking up, how many starter boxes, even if you're picking up 2 starter boxes, if you're playing AC or any other factions, I highly suggest picking up a Monpok dice set if you don't already own Strike dice. So if you don't play Monpok or Riot Quest already, grab a Monpok dice set because you will be rolling more than 5 dice. You will.
Yeah.
And if you're Market Worlds, you'll be rolling more than that just to hit.
Yeah. And there's lots of times where you'll be rolling more than 10 dice. So even 2 starter sets isn't necessarily enough. So grab
It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
It's close. I mean, you're not usually rolling. I mean, I rolled like 14 dice one time, but that was like one time. But 12 isn't out of craziness. 11 isn't out of craziness. But Monpok dice sets are like $10, and you'll have more dice than you'll ever need. So
I just want to touch on bumping Marcher Worlds up to full size real quick because I didn't really skim over that. I would consider taking a third engineer, just because they don't get around the board very well. So oftentimes I find if my army's spread out over a good chunk of the board, my engineers get left behind. So it's nice to be able to summon one in a forward position. A third Dusk Wolf isn't a horrible idea. I usually bring 3 different options for the Dusk Wolf. 4 more squads. I typically go 2 heavy squads, 2 infiltrators, 1 ranger fire team. And then I bring a second weaver for sure. Other than that, you have your 3 heroes. So just kind of season to your play style. And then I bring a Razorbat, usually with the Fiddler and Co. upgrade, because I love fiddles, and sometimes a second Razorbat, just the generic one. Outside of that, you basically just pick up weapon kits to suit your play style. Marcher Worlds has so many different variations of how they can be played. You just have to kind of figure out which one works for you and pick up the weapon packs according to that, is what I would suggest.
They only have like 3 bad options in the entire faction.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And I will mention for ISA, you will be running Paladin Commanders on full size, 100%.
Full size, yes.
Full size, 100%. You're running Paladin Commanders. How many you have? One or 2, I would say. Probably 2.
Okay, so we've covered what a player needs besides minis. We covered where they start. How about we run down some tips for new players? Justin, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I see people do that is like nails in the chalkboard for me almost is not cycling your Cypher deck. So I'll see people, usually new players, they'll hold on to the same 5 cards for the whole first pulse round, or they'll play 1 or 2 cards the entire pulse round. I'm like, are you going to discard? No, I like these. Well, you didn't play them the last 2 turns. Like, they can't be that good if you aren't using them, right? Like, one thing you need to do, your Cypher deck is so important to your strategy, you need to get through those cards and get back to those cards that you really want. So make sure you're playing your Cypher deck. Make sure you're figuring out ways to just get those cards out of your hand. Some quick tips are, like all those activation token removal cards, your squad doesn't necessarily need an activation token on them to play them. So if they're not doing anything for you, you don't see yourself activating the squad or whatever, just play them, get them out of your hands, move on. Get them out of there so that you can get more options in your hand. Don't let them fill up your hand and keep you from being able to do really cool things in your games. I'll let Sneaky cover the next one because I think this is like his jam right here.
Well, going back to the Cypher thing real quick, is a lot of it comes with just getting a little bit more familiar with the game to where you can plan out your turns, like knowing what you're going to summon, what you plan on activating. Because my rule of thumb is if I'm not going to use this card in the next 2 turns, dump it, right? But if I know I'm going to use the card in the next 2 turns, I'll hold on to it. So that's just kind of my rule of thumb, and that can maybe help some new players decide when they should dump things and when they should keep them. Now for the next thing is just watch your arc. Like we've talked about a couple times how important arc management is in this game because it carries through everything. So that again goes to planning out what it is that you want to do. So do you need more units on the table, more than you need to be able to charge this Warjack up with 3 points, right? Like how much work does this Warjack need to get done versus how many units do I need to play versus what Furies do I need to play or what do I have in my hand? Because if I don't have any Furies in my hand, I don't particularly care, right? So it's about looking at your resources that are on the board and planning out what it is that you want to do with them and not getting caught in the situation where you have no arc in your pool and you're planning on activating a scythe next round, right? Because
I've done that. I've done that. Thanks, Sneaky. Good call out there.
Yep. I mean, it's such a good example though because like the scythe's whole thing is that it's got the scything run. So if you can't charge it to where it can do scything run, you've crippled your activation, and that can throw your whole turn off, which can impact the game
Let me tell you what, a scythe feels real derpy if it can't do a scything run. It does not feel like a great model when it's got one Rat 3 attack and one Rat 4 attack or Map 4 attack.
Yeah.
Feels real rough. It's a bad day for the scythe if you are stuck in that situation.
Mm-hmm. And that's why that's what first brought me into ISA and why I like them so much, is just because of how they can manage their arc. Like, I can scoop a bunch of arc off, charge Arcane Synthesis, a Weaver, the Weaver goes up, Whop and Stick something, then charges a Firebrand to full, and the Firebrand activates, and the next turn I Impulse, induce for that same Firebrand, charge the Weaver, the Firebrand activates, and I activate the Weaver, scoop the arc off of the Firebrand, then play a Fury. Like, just being able to see those types of plays really requires you to be able to manage and manipulate your arc correctly. So definitely pay attention to that, and just the moral of the story here is plan out what it is that you want to do and where your resources need to go.
The next one is actually something that Sneaky taught me to do very well, because when I started the game, I sucked at it. Always play for scenario. When I first started out, I had a really bad habit of just chasing kills. I would just focus on removing as many of my opponent's models off the board as possible, and I would often end up losing because of that, because I would put my models in position that weren't relevant to scenario. So it doesn't matter if it's where you're moving your model to attack or where you're summoning things, make sure that you're thinking about how that thing is getting onto scenario to score.
Right. I think the biggest thing with that is putting out void gates appropriately.
Yes.
Like, I've seen so many people put a void gate out and summon a Marauder more than 7 inches away from an objective, and I'm like, well, okay, I guess I don't have to worry about that Marauder. He's gonna, maybe be able to smack something and maybe be able to shoot something, but he's not actually contributing to him winning your opponent winning the game at that point. So
yeah,
be mindful of those things.
Yeah, and on the flip side to what Josh was saying about being too aggressive is a lot of times with new players coming from other war games, I see them being too defensive, where they're keeping their models off of the scenario in order to protect their models. And if your model's not on scenario, I don't care about it. Right? So if it's not on scenario, then it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if it's alive or dead if it's not impacting the scenario, because that's how you win the game, right?
Exactly.
Outside of maybe changing activations or giving yourself a board advantage in a certain location of the board, you can't win the game by just flat out killing your opponent. Like we said at the beginning of the cast, there is a mercy rule, but none of us have seen it come even close to that. So
I mean, you've tabled me a few times. I don't want to.
I've tabled you, but I've never had enough left over after that to be able to A, get at your Void Gate, or B, put enough work into your Void Gate to actually come close to the mercy rule.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was begging for mercy by the end of a few of those games, so it was close enough for me.
I mean, begging for mercy and getting mercy, two very different things.
As I felt.
And we've also had multiple games where someone gets the table and they come back and they win the game.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And so that's one thing to just keep in mind, that you win through scenario. So making sure your stuff is relevant to scenario is probably the most key thing you can do for yourself as a new player. If you can learn to play scenario well, everything else in the game will fall in line for you.
Josh, just hearing you say that brings a tear to my good eye. I'm just telling you right now.
You guys have been a good influence on me.
Uh,
My parenting job is over.
like,
My baby's
well,
in the nest.
when you said good eye, now all I can think about is take my strong hand.
So I used to have a sergeant in the military that was always like, y'all make me water up my good eye. I just always thought it was so hilarious, so now I say it all the time.
That's funny.
Do you want to take the next one, Justin?
Sure. One of the biggest things that I think a lot of people have a hard time doing is asking questions, because they don't want to. They're like, oh, this is a noob question. I should know this. I should be able to figure this out on my own. But seriously, just ask questions. people love to talk about the games they're hyped about, and you asking questions about it just shows that you're also interested. So, anybody that truly cares about their game wants to answer your questions. Sure, it may be I personally don't feel like there's dumb questions. I'm usually that guy that's like screen capping rulebook pages and being like, oh, here's where you find your answer. Ask your questions. Do not let anybody intimidate you into being scared to ask a question. Ask them. Get a better game experience by knowing what's going on the board and knowing what you're up against. And hey, how does this rule interact with this? How would it work if I did this? Hey, I would like to. My plan for this turn is I'd like to cortical rampager so that then I can walk and go up this ladder later on in my turn. Do you feel like I have enough movement for that? Because a good opponent is going to help you try and accomplish what you're trying to do because they want as good a game as they can get. Just ask the questions. Don't try and be super clandestine about it. Do the things you need to do, right?
Yeah, and then honestly, like the best place to go is the Warcaster Discord. Like everyone in there is super hyped for the game. They want to help out. They want to answer questions, and we we want to see the game grow and develop and be awesome. So definitely, if you're comfortable with Discord at all, join the Warcaster Discord. Come in, say hi, ask some questions, see what we're chatting about. There's the Facebook too, but honestly, the Discord's way better.
I'm in a ton of gaming communities because at any one time I have like 6 or 7 games on the go. And of any of the gaming communities I'm a part of, Warcaster is by a massive margin the nicest community that I've been a part of. So don't be nervous to reach out. Someone will be there to help you. Someone will be there to teach you. There's someone there for anything you may need.
Right. Like, I don't think I've ever talked to somebody on there and they've just flat out dismissed me. They've been like, hey, I don't know the answer to that. That's a good thing to ask. We try and help each other out, and we even try and come up with like house rules for how we would suggest doing it until we get an official answer. So 100% ask your questions, get answers, feel confident in how you're playing the game, ask your opponent questions about their army, figure out what they can do. Just don't be afraid to ask things. That's all.
You want to take the last one, Justin? Because I don't think this was one for me.
That's messed up, man. But
funny enough, I was about to direct that to
the
Justin.
last tip for new players is just try and have fun with the game. The only reason that anybody's playing games is to have fun, relax, try and do something engaging and fun. Just make sure it's fun and it doesn't feel like work, right? Come into the game with a good attitude. Try and do your best in the game. There are definitely some things that could be improved at the game. That's with every game there is out there. Don't focus on those things. Just try and do the best of the game you've got. If you just kind of relax a little bit, this game is a ton of fun, and it's really engaging and really easy to access. And I think you'll have a great time.
All right.
Try not to be too brutal on new players.
Don't worry.
Yes. That is the most hypocritical thing I've heard us ever say on this podcast. Sneaky notoriously teaches people the hard way. He is the paddle per se.
Okay, here's a tip for teaching new players. Let them do cool things. What I mean is, hey, if they're trying to walk up and do cover all the time, show them how cover works. Don't just be like, well, I'm just going to pull out double phase projectiles and a spray, and I don't care about your cover, and okay, that's the game. Thanks for coming. Let them experience some of the rules when you're first trying to teach them the game. Show them that there are things that will ignore that, but let them experience what different things do, right? Like, because cover is a pretty fundamental part of the game, and if you just come in somebody's first game and you've got 3 jacks that have scout cortexes, and you just shoot them off the board every turn, it's kind of a big negative experience. Or if you come in with a fighter Duskwolf and you happen to do 20 plus attacks in one activation because they really didn't place that well off of their Void Gate, it's kind of a negative experience.
I just want to know how this turned out from us attacking Sneaky to you turning it on me.
What do you mean?
No,
did you do that to a new player? That was an attack on Sneaky.
Yeah, I did that
Sneaky
exactly.
in a new player game This guy's like, I'm gonna summon some things out of my gate. I'm gonna have all the army. And Sneaky's like, I can't allow people to have models on the board. And he moved a fighter Dusk Wolf up, and he's like, hey, just so you know, I have kinetic accelerator, so every attack is gonna be an attack on everything. So I've got 16 base attacks. But hey, you know what's cool about this model is that I get to make an attack against everything. And whenever I kill something, I get to make another attack against everything. Isn't that cool? And he just did like 20 plus attacks on this one person. This was an attack on Sneaky. What did you do to some poor new player? That's what I want to know, Josh.
Now I feel like I shouldn't have spoke up. Whoops.
What did you do to somebody?
I mean, some of my league games in the last round of the league weren't that great. I'm sorry, Edicule.
Now, that's a league I can kind of like... And, you know, leagues, sometimes if they are for new players, you know, there should be people that, hey, I'm a new player, I tagged myself, hey, kind of show me the rules. And, you know, it's a league. It's not like a tournament. There's no cash prizes. There's no... Even the Tabletop Simulator League we're running right now, there's no prizes. You know, you got no skin in the game. It was a free league. Like, whether you get first or last, it doesn't matter. You know, like, if your ego is that important to you, if you're like, I have to win this at all costs when you come into my game, I'll be like, fine, you can have it. I don't care. You know, like, I could care less. I'll give you whatever score you want. I don't care. You know, like, it means nothing to me whether I win or lose. I just want to have a fun, engaging game where we're both having to make really strong decisions throughout the game, right? And I want things to be decisions, right? And I want new players to understand those decision trees. And when you take things that are like positioning for cover out of that equation for them early on, they don't get to experience when it is important to do that. And I think it kind of ruins the new player experience personally. So I know a lot of the times when I'm playing against new players, I'll actually play like my jacks don't have Cortexes. Or like in AC, I'll play with the Spider Cortex, so I have Pathfinder and I don't take fall damage. Ooh. You know, like I try not to do those Cortexes that'll completely ignore game rules or make it hard for another player to experience a certain rule.
Yeah. Well, for anyone out there that is planning on running demo games, you can never run a demo game worse than me. Because at one point, I tabled a player on their own first turn of the game ever.
Yeah, don't be sneaky.
But they asked me to. They said, show me what this can do. And I said, you don't want to do that because this is what's going to happen. They said, no, I want to see. So I showed them.
Does anyone remember the quote?
What? What quote?
Something about Sneaky teaches beginners with like a paddle that's wrapped in barbed wire or something.
Rodko's quote. Listen, the only thing that I got out of that quote was that I do God's work. All right?
That is the only thing you would take out of that as the person they're talking about.
So this is true.
Essentially, to sum up the quote, they said that the man teaches with a stick. Thank you for giving me a whoopin'. Keep doing God's work. Paraphrased a little, but that was the gist.
They said, listen, if you want to learn a lot about the game, play
The
Sneaky.
hard way.
Yeah.
Well,
it's gotta be painful.
Those things too, like, I know we're focused on new players, but if you are actually really hyped about the game and any game that you're playing, I don't care, you know, if you can take this advice, you know, and take it to other games, that's cool too. Play against better players than yourself. That is one of the fastest ways to get better at anything you're trying to do, is to experience what better players than you are doing. Right? So sure, sneaky is just, you know, see, like, listen, I'm better than you. I'm just gonna whoop on you a little bit. You know, I'm gonna feel good. You're gonna wonder about life afterwards, but you'll be better for it afterwards. That's what Sneaky's doing.
Welcome to my life, people.
And look how you turned out, Josh.
It's true. I have got exponentially better after countless nights of laying in bed being like, what just happened?
Why am I sore?
I've developed a Warcaster drinking problem because of Sneaky.
Yeah. I gotta say, like when I first started playing Brawl Machine, like, I was terrible because that game requires so much knowledge, and I got whooped up on constantly. When I first started playing, Dino would whoop up on me constantly. But you learn and you
Hey,
grow.
I
And
still did it softly.
I didn't say like you like.
I was not the brutal teacher.
Yeah, I didn't say you spanked me, but like,
But like, we
I
also had
lost
a
a
thing
lot.
where like after our first like couple games, like we kind of both felt out what kind of player each other was, and the gloves came off. Like
Yeah.
we were like, yeah, we're both going to get better at this game, and the gloves came off, and we both became much better players for it. But like for those first couple games, I was forgetting cortexes or like doing little things like, oh look, you could easily get on this point, like.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to tell them how to play the game without telling them how to play the game.
Yeah, for sure. I did that in my game earlier today. I played against a newer person. They put down a void gate, and I was like, well, if you actually move the void gate over 1 inch, then you can actually deploy on the other side of this wall. They were like, oh, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. Justin?
Probably this is the biggest thing, and I think I speak for all of us here. When you can play the game, when it's safe, get out there, get with physical models, get with physical people, play the game. I know that right now it's hard because COVID and the world and everything's on fire, but nothing draws new players, nothing gets you more engaged in the game than actually being able to see it and see two people enjoying it or be one of those people enjoying it. It's a completely different experience when you have the tactile models and you're trying to say, oh well, I'm trying to shoot up this, I'm trying to use my weaver to spray at this guy up here, and then having him physically fall down a 5-inch building. Like, don't actually push somebody's model off the 5-inch building. I mean, place the model down. But I will jump across the table if somebody just pushes my model off a building.
Listen, there's a reason TTS has the flick tool. I mean, I'm just using it.
But what I'm saying is, when it's safe to do that, nothing beats that in-person experience. Play in person, get experience. If you have somebody now that you feel safe playing with, do it. It's worth it. The game is so much better in person. And if that's not possible, try and get people playing Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator does a really good job for what it is. I know that Tabletop Simulator is very finicky about some things, and the community has actually come a very long way with the game. I'm actually working on something right now. I'm going to see if I can find a way to code it to where I can make a lot of measurements a little easier. I just have to see if I can get it done. But the Tabletop Simulator community is only getting better. The maps are getting much better. Sneaky's been making some amazing maps recently. I really should get on doing that myself, but I'm a terrible person. And just the game itself is just getting better and better all the time. And really, just get out and play it.
Sneaky, you got any final thoughts?
Have fun. Come hang out. Like, it's an awesome community. Come be a part of it.
Have fun as he brandishes that paddle with the barbed wire on it.
Have fun. Get better. You happy?
I'll stay on the same train of thought as those guys. Have fun. Tell your friends about it. Show your friends some of the models. Tell people at your local store about it. Just let's get this game out there. It's still in its infancy. It's basically just at a Kickstarter and just went retail. So there's a lot of people that say like they can't find people to play with, this and that, and that's because it literally just hit retail. So you have to put a little work in to grow the game. So let's all put that work in together and let's get this game to grow and be something great.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And share the Through the Void Gate podcast.
And tell them about us. Shameless
Hey,
plug.
and join the Discord. Anybody that wants to join the Discord, please join the Warcaster Discord. Just go to the Warcaster Facebook group and ask for the Discord. You will get it. I'm sure there's probably a link somewhere on there anyways. But, hey, make a new post and say, hey, I'd like to get on the Warcaster Discord. I will probably be one of these people that personally, within a few minutes, put the link up there for you because I'm usually pretty quick with that.
Okay. And to close things out, I would just like to say that you can find us on the More Than Dice Network on any podcasting app, as well as you can find us at Essex War Games on YouTube, Facebook. You can find us at www.throughthevoidgate.com, where Justin has been busting his hump, pushing out articles. If written content is your thing, go there. He has lots of informative articles out. Justin, do you want to tell people a couple things you've been working on?
So I've already got a pendulum article out, kind of like dissecting some of like the nitty gritty about the pendulum packet. It's a longer read, so I'm very wordy. So sorry, not sorry. Recently I just finished an article just talking about the scenarios and kind of dissecting the scenarios because I like to math things out a little different. So for me, like the distance between different objectives and between different things and best spots to put void gates are very important to me when I'm looking at a map. And so those things are on my maps that I made, and they're made with a little online sketchbook thing, so they're awful. So, that's all me. So sorry for your eyes. I think Sneaky's going to dissect that into 2 articles. He might just leave it as 1, but that one's also pretty long. Eventually, once we have more ciphers, I'm going to make a full cipher article and kind of talk about each of the ciphers and just kind of dissect which ones are mainstays, which ones are options, and which ones you probably I doubt you'll ever see in a deck.
Yeah, I've already have articles for that up for the Kickstarter 1 ciphers, but I really look forward to expanding that with the Kickstarter 2 ones once we know what all of them are.
Right.
Yeah, there's also faction overviews for each of the faction and going over how to build them out, like we talked about in this episode. There's a bunch of new player content about just getting into Warcaster, what makes it cool, so you can share that with people if they prefer reading something. The faction overviews have all the cards that are released currently if you want to reference them, and just a whole bunch of other content on there. So just go check it out.
Yeah. Also, we do have a Twitch channel. I have been streaming on there all my League games so far, and maybe one day we'll get back to doing the shoutcasted battles.
I hope so. That was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I'd really look forward to getting back into that. So I think we'll probably try and pick up Twitch more. I know I'm pretty terrible at Twitch personally, so realistically, I'm not. I'm just kind of casting my games and not being as interactive as I should be. I apologize.
This one's kind of my fault. I got a little busy. I'm starting a collectibles business in my own time, and it's taken slightly away from the Twitch content. But yes, I promise we will get back to it. If anyone wants to play one of us a game and have it shoutcasted by the other members, which is just them giving commentary on the game and what they think people could do better and so on and so forth, just reach out to one of us on Facebook and we can get that scheduled.
Yeah,
Facebook
or Discord.
Or Discord, yes. The boys love Discord. I'm more of a Facebook person.
I like Discord because it doesn't have all the noise of everything else that comes with my Facebook. It's when I go to the Warcaster thing, it's just Warcaster. I only look at Warcaster stuff. I personally hate Discord. I know sometimes I'll think I'm out of the voice chat for the game lobbies, and I'm just sitting in there for hours, just like painting, like.
I work from my phone, so I think it's just like for me, I just see the notifications pop up more readily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for reference for everybody, on Facebook, I'm Spencer H. We've got Justin is Justin Moore and Josh is Joshua Essex. And on Discord, I am Sneaky Buffalo. Justin is Dino, and don't even worry about Josh.
Oh.
Hey,
Actually,
you don't respond to my Discord.
Like, we made it very simple to know who we are.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not wrong yet. If you need to contact one of us, contact one of those guys through Discord. They'll get back to you faster than me.
I'll get back to Josh. They'll be like, hey, listen, answer this guy.
Yeah. If you need something from me specifically, they will contact me, and I will get to you. I swear.
Yeah,
I'm just
I
bad at
literally
checking Discord.
I literally have to do that for the League games. I'm like, hey, Josh, so-and-so's looking for you.
He'll also sell collectibles.
Yes.
So, just for
here's the answer to
reference,
your question, but do you like Pokemon?
also not wrong. So, for reference, we can be found at twitch.tv/Essex Wargames. And coming up in the next couple weeks, we will be launching a Patreon with benefits for all our supporters. we are not going to lock any content behind our Patreon. It's just going to be essentially our tip jar. We don't believe in paywalling content. We are here to grow a game, and in my opinion, that has no place in growing a game. So just look out for that announcement coming up. Thank you, everyone, for all the support we've received so far. This is episode number 10. I think Sneaky said that 89% of podcasts or something crazy don't make it past episode 9.
Yeah, it's like 82% or something like that.
So thank you guys for all the motivation and support we've received. We look forward to keeping it going well into the future. On that note, I hope everyone's staying safe out there, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Adios.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Essex Wargames. Now, if y'all enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, for more content, you can check out the Through the Void Gate blog, or join us on the Essex Wargames Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Stay safe and roll super strikes.